Hi there, this is Nick Reeves, and it's time for us to go traveling to Westeros. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Nick Reeves Show. We're going to do some fun traveling today. I hope you've got your backpack and your Valyrian steel, because today we're going to Westeros. Now, as you know, Westeros is the popular land from Game of Thrones. The death count is fairly high for Westeros, and that's why I want you to be prepared when you go. What we're going to do today is a quick overview of the lands of Westeros and the Seven Kingdoms and beyond. And we're going to go over each one and a few little tips for each place. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, we start our tour with the Vale of Arryn. Now, the Vale of Arryn, of course, is ruled by House Arryn from the castle, the Eyrie. You may remember the Eyrie for its lovely trapdoors where you can fall to your death. So watch your step if you're heading on up that hills. Now, bastards in the House of Arryn generally have the surname of Stone. So make sure to be polite if you meet a young man or young woman with that last name. Now, it's known that the Vale is dominated by the Mountains of the Moon, which is an offshoot of the many chains, and it's bordered and prowled by the hill tribes. So I recommend bringing a little extra gold to placate the hill people so they don't horribly murder you. And when you do get to the Eyrie, make sure to make good with the House of Arryn, or they will likely either put you in a cell with an open door where you can slowly slide your way down to die, or simply push you through one of the moon doors where you will tumble to your death. All in all, a beautiful place. Make sure and take lots of pictures when you're up on the mountains, and watch out for those hill people who can get a bit murdery. We're going to see that's quite a theme for our Westeros tour. Next up on our trip through Westeros is the Riverlands. Of course, the Riverlands are ruled by the House Tully and from the Castle of Riverrun. Now, in this area, the bastards generally have the surname of Rivers, so it's another one to keep a good eye out for if you happen to hear that, so that you're not rude and go ahead and put that foot in your mouth and end up getting a dagger in your back. Now, the noble towns, the most notable towns there is the Stony Sept, and the Riverlands are dominated by the mighty river Trident. Now, you'll definitely want to try to get some fishing done there. You just want to make sure that it's okay with the Lord so that he doesn't have you strung up, hauled and quartered, or slowly run over the rocks until you're dead. Now, this was once an independent kingdom, but it's long since been overrun by the Ironborn, and centuries before Aegon's invasion. So that's why it's not counted as an eighth kingdom. You were probably wondering that yourself. But despite that, it does have a significant size and population. Now, the Riverlands, as the names would suggest, are fertile and populous in Westeros, and unfortunately, because of their many resources and because of their central location, they are often the center place for many of the wars that take place in Westeros. So you'll want to make sure and bring your chainmail and your weapon of choice whenever you're visiting. I always keep a mace in the back. I find that it's pretty handy against unarmed bandits, and if someone has plate mail, you can just give them a good bash on the side of the head, and that'll do the trick. Let's move on. Next up on our tour is the Westerly Lands. Now, the Westerly Lands you're probably familiar. It's ruled by the House of Lannister. Of course, Lannister is known for always paying their debts. And it's the castle of Casterly Rock. It's a beautiful scenic location where you're going to want to get a lot of family photos there, mainly because the odds that some of your family will probably be murdered during your trip to Westeros are fairly high. Now, The principal city and port in the Westerlands is Lannisport. It's almost like the Lannisters really like their name. Of course, I wouldn't say that in front of them because they would almost certainly have me killed. Now, the Westerlands is noted for their hills and low mountains, which are rich in silver and gold, which is why House Lannister is so wealthy. Now, important thing to remember when you're in that is many times you'll actually be more beneficial to barter when you are in those lands. They have plenty of silver, they have plenty of gold. Bringing some goods will actually be very, very helpful. You can trade weapons, you can trade anything that you've picked up in the other lands, wolf pelts or obsidian daggers. We'll get to that in just a minute. Is very, very useful when you are visiting the Westerlands. Let's go ahead and move on. Next up, it's time to head to the islands. It's time to go to the Iron Islands, ruled by the Greyjoys. Now, from the Castle of Pike in the island of the same name, bastards who are of noble birth typically have the last name Pike, so another good one to look out for. The major islands of the chain are Great Wick, Old Wick, Harlaw, Black Tide, Orkmount, Saltcliffe, and, of course, Pike itself. Now, that's probably where you're going to want to spend most of your time. Just remember that the Ironborn are not particularly favorable to people from other regions and may kill you outright. So you're going to want to make sure that you've made good with an Ironborn before heading into that area. Now, the Iron Islands are rain-lashed and cold. Now, the people there, the Ironborn, are very hardy and tough. So if you can show them that you were very tough, and go ahead, if like this backpack, I murdered a wayward knight and took this backpack for my own. So if I went to the Iron Islands, I would make sure to let them know that, because that would impress them. If I told them that I bought this at Old Navy, they wouldn't be as impressed and would likely kill me in order to take it. So keep that in mind when you're heading out to those lovely set of islands. Let's go ahead and move on. Are you ready for the kingdom? That's right, the creme de la creme, the Crown Lands. Now, ruled directly by the king on the Iron Throne, and of course, seeing the Iron Throne is something you're not going to want to miss, though of course it may be the very last thing you see before you are summarily executed for some small offense against the king or queen. Now, the King's Landing in the Red Keep is the largest city in Westeros and capital of the Seven Kingdoms. Bastards in that area have the last name Waters, so you'll certainly be running into a few there. Now, other notable townships of the Crown Lands include Dukedale and Rosebery. Now, the Crown Lands stretch all across the shores of Blackwater Bay, where there was quite a kerfuffle there just a short while ago. And in the Narrow Sea, there are places like Dragonstone, Driftmark, and Claw Isle. Now, these islands are generally administered from Dragonstone. The Crown Lands, they were never a kingdom themselves prior to the conquest, which is exactly why they are not considered a kingdom in of themselves. But they're certainly key because they are now the seat of power. You probably won't see a dragon there, but if you do, it'll be a fantastic sight before you are roasted alive. Let's move on. I hope you remembered to bring your umbrella because we're heading to the Stormlands. Now, ruled by House Baratheon, the castle is known as Storm's End. Now, bastards in this area typically have the last name Storm, but remember, that's for noble birth, so you do want to keep an eye out if you hear that so that you don't offend them and get yourself run through. Now, the Stormlands include several offshore islands, most noticeably Eastermont and Tarth. It ranks moderately among the other kingdoms in terms of population and wealth, and the Stormlands are racked by frequent storms, so you're not only going to want to bring an umbrella, but probably a poncho as well. Now, the Stormlands are also one of the most densely wooded forests. They have many places such as Kingswood, that spread across, so the climate itself is actually that of a temperate rainforest. So I think you're really going to enjoy vacationing there. That is, of course, as long as you are not either dashed into the rocks while sailing there, or if you offend a lord and they decide to tie you to one of the trees and leave you there until you die. Let's go ahead and move on. We're getting there. It's within your reach. That's right, we're moving to the Reach. The Reach, of course, is ruled by House Tyrell from the Castle of Highgarden. Now, bastards of noble birth there generally have the last name of Flowers. Isn't that just lovely? I'd love to have the last name Flowers. The principal city and port is Old Town, with the second largest city in all of Westeros. Now, the Reach is the second largest region in Westeros and by far the most fertile and populous. So you're gonna see this is a really good time for you to do some people watching. Just make sure to don't maintain eye contact too long, or you may offend someone, and again, they will tend to stab you right in the eye. Now, this is, of course, as I said, ruled by the Tyrells, and they have a vast armies that result in them being wealthier than any other family except for the Lannisters. The Reach also includes several offshore islands such as Shield Island and Arbor. I personally recommend you check out Shield Island. It's a really great vacation spot and does tend to have less murders than the mainland itself. Let's go ahead and move on to our second to last one. I hope you brought your sunscreen because we're going to Dorne. Dorne is ruled by House Martell from the Castle of Sunspear. Now, bastards in this area take on the surname Sand. Sounds kind of gritty to me, but who am I to judge? Now, the principal ports of Dorne are Sunspear itself and the planky town at the mouth of Greenblood. Doesn't that sound lovely? The people of Dorne are isolated from the rest of Westeros by the Sea of Dorne and the Red Mountains, giving them a greater sense of national identity. So you're going to have a lot more independent thinkers there. They have a lovely accent, and they do have a penchant for poison. So I do recommend that you pour your own drinks when you are in Dorne. Now, since Robert's Rebellion and the murder of several prominent Dornish nobles during the sack of King's Landing, the Dornish have pursued a more isolationist path. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you have permission to go, or you're likely to get stabbed by a spear, poisoned, or both. Let's move on to the last on our list. Last but not least, we are in the north with the huge city of Winterfell. The north is easily one of the most vast and but least populated of the Seven Kingdoms because of its harsh climate. But Winterfell does have springs that allow for the growing of vegetation and for keeping people warm throughout the winter. Of course, if you're very hardy, get those hiking boots on and head on up north to see the Wall. You won't want to miss the Wall, where you can see the Bay of Seals or the Bay of Ice. And of course, if you look over beyond, you just might see some wildlings coming, trying to sneak their way through. Now, you'll want to enjoy the Wall, and remember that any reports of night creatures or undead or giants who have glowing eyes but will try to kill you even though they, aren't exactly alive, that's just a bunch of poppycock. Don't worry about that. I really hope you've enjoyed my overview of Westeros. I hope you enjoy your trip. Remember, pack for everything you're going to need. There's many different climates. You're definitely going to want to bring your armor and your favorite weapon, and bring a smile. Now, from me to you, enjoy your trip in Westeros. Oh, I see you survived your trip to Westeros. That is very impressive. If you'd like to see more role plays like this, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? And if you like that, here's another video for you to watch. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember, winter is coming.